Alright guys, we're back at it again. Second episode of working on the Maverick. I had to go ahead and switch these two around because that one's on the back burner. I'm going to be working on that way later. And it's just nice to work on concrete again. Oh my god, it is a godsend. So basically at the end of the last episode, you probably saw the massive leak that happened. So, long story short, for 3 weeks I was trying to figure out which parts go where on the front of this engine. I've never worked on a small block Ford before. Kind of hate it. So what happened was, this right here is the water pump that I originally purchased. It is for a later model, small block Ford Mustang or Bronco. Turns out, it is not the right one. These little channels right here are actually face the opposite direction. So when I placed this on the front of the block, it started gushing out water on the side, and that's what happened at the end of the last video. I may or may not have cried. So instead of spending more money on parts, I decided to just go ahead and refurbish the old water pump. There was nothing wrong with it. I just wanted to try and get something new, but instead I took this back, cleaned it off with a wire wheel, and then sprayed it with a satin clear and put it back on. Boom, done. I went ahead and put everything back together. It's all nice and buttoned up. It's great. And I even topped it off with water. And guess what? It's not crying anymore. And neither am I. So, for this episode, what we're going to do is work on getting all my gauges hooked up. Get all the oil pressure, engine temp, and the ammeter from the gauge cluster. And after I get all that wired up and put together, I'm going to go ahead and jump this thing off. See if it starts. And if it starts, see if everything is operational. And then for the first time, I'll be able to see if my car is overheating instead of waiting for the smell. I'm going to start with the battery and work my way around because there's a lot of things that I don't like. I'm going to take that off, clean it up, put it back together. The grounding for this cable, and that's loose underneath the header, so I got to deal with that. And so I'm going to go this way, wire up the relay properly, wire up the fan as I go. And then I'm going to sort out this wiring here, and I don't like how this wiring is set up over the top of the head of the motor, which is not great. So I'm going to rewire that to go around the strut tower. As I go along, I'm going to replace this temp sensor. I'm going to take out this electronic oil pressure sensor, put the mechanical one in, and then route it through the firewall. Luckily enough for me, there's already a hole right here, so I'm going to use that. I don't have to drill anything and wire everything, and that should do it. So I'm going to mount these gauges up, and then when I find a spot for them. So I've got this old radio case that's bolted in, but we've got no radio, and it's got some holes here. So this is a perfect spot. So I'm going to take this out, mount these right there. I don't even got to do much. So that's going to go there. Let's get to it. Awesome. got done wiring everything up. I brushed through all the connections, tightened down everything. I made this more organized. Made the battery secure, you know. I got the fan plugged into, wired into the ignition, so when the T key turns on, it'll just stay on. With this clearance, I'm hoping everything will be all right. I mean, the last setup had even less clearance and it worked fine. So if you're wondering why your gauge cluster isn't working, here's the tech tip. Make sure that it's plugged in. This wasn't even plugged in at all the years that I've had this thing. So there's a chance that this could still work. Maybe not, but who knows? All I really have left to do now is to go ahead and see if they work or not, and not kill myself. So yeah. And works. So she runs. Still got a few issues. Oil pressure is absurdly high. It's right maxed out at 80 on the gauge. There's not that much fuel in it, so I'm gonna go and get some fuel for it as well. This is an issue that I've always had that I just never got around to fixing. This is the oil, this is the fuel filler cap on the back. And this is the fuel tank, and you have this, it's not secured, so I gotta get some hose clamps for that, to fix that, because every time I fill it up, fuel spills out the side. And you know, safety. And with the high oil pressure, I'm gonna go ahead and give it an oil change, maybe change out the filter, although the filter hasn't seen a lot of use, but I'm gonna take it off and check it anyway. So yeah. Oh, and also top off the transmission fluid that I let leak all over the place. So I sorted through everything I wanted to sort out yesterday on the Maverick. Finally got the car wired up and running. I got the oil and temp gauges all hooked up, and I took it for a test drive. Breaking down is fun. A couple things we've already found out on this test drive is I have a loose throttle linkage because that came loose. This thing eats up a lot of gas. Yeah. There's a few things to figure out. A couple of things. I decided not to hook up the amp meter because A, I didn't feel like it, and B, I don't care about amps. I want to get a voltmeter instead and put that in here. That way I can read how much voltage I have on the battery. Realized that the mechanical fuel pump started spurting fuel out the side, and apparently there's this hole right here, and it looks like it's for a possible return feed line to the tank, which I don't need one because this thing is carbureted, so I just plugged that hole up. With the new fan, I'm pretty happy with it. It stayed around 195, which is where you want it. Of course, it's not a suitable setup for like doing burnouts and getting really rippy in it, but that's gonna come later. When it came to the oil pressure, when I initially started it up, it was slammed into the top of the meter, which was at 80 psi, which is not great, and probably more than that. So I went ahead and put new oil in it, high mileage oil, because I have no idea how high the mileage is on this engine, and that dropped. So after running it idle for a little while, in the ideal range, it was a little under 40 psi, which is great for me. I'm pretty proud of that. The only real thing left to do today is pull this thing out, get all this dirt and crap off, clean off the windshields, and pressure wash the thing. Make it look somewhat presentable. I think this is going to be the first time I've actually washed this thing since I've owned this car.